Welcome to the Growth and Influence Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Schultz. I'm excited to have you here today. We're going to be talking about, it's 2024, what needs to change in B2B SaaS marketing. Now, obviously, this is a reference to the changing environment that we've been facing. It really started 18 months ago, but which people are still figuring out, like, what's the economic model? How are we going to create success in this completely changed SaaS economy, where everybody seems to be playing the game on hard mode? There are answers in that today. In 2024, B2B SaaS CMOs and their marketing organizations are facing more pressure than ever to produce measurable results, show a productive return on marketing spend, and allocate their resources more efficiently. Experiencing pressure from sales and other stakeholders on one side, while on the other side, the lead nurture and/or ABM programs are churning away more slowly than ever, delivering few leads to sales, with many of those that do go to sales poorly qualified and not going very far in the pipeline. Reporting this to the CEO or the CRO or the CFO is painful because they want to see a return on investment. Everyone knows the slow movement of prospects through marketing and sales means that business and revenue may be going to competitors instead of to their own company. So what do? Jump back into full days of meetings, juggling multiple campaigns, looking for little ways to increase efficiency of your resource allocation? Do you move up market? And if so, are you torn between that and the SMB or mid-market where money still exists, but you may not have as much support from the board? Not only is that a budget decision, it's a decision about all resources: time, people, expertise, and money. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to not only create more pipeline, but to do it in a way that leads to faster revenue realization, utilizes your limited resources more efficiently, and produces metrics that you can measure and optimize much more easily than what you're doing in lead nurture today. Specifically, we're going to talk about the fastest way to get leads who aren't moving forward into sales calls without getting accused of providing bad leads to sales. We're going to talk about the easiest thing you can do to increase efficiency in your marketing mix. We're going to talk about how to stop worrying about attribution and show direct proof of marketing results and contribution. We're going to talk about the path to completely operationalize lead to pipeline conversion for segments that you'd rather not focus on. And we're going to talk about lead capture for prepared leads and lead nurture for unprepared leads, and how that's a false dichotomy and what you can do instead. Welcome to this show. Excited to have you here. Welcome to the Growth and Influence Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Schultz. I'm a B2B SaaS direct response marketer. I started this podcast for a few reasons. Number one, I believe B2B SaaS marketing has suffered from absurd levels of inefficiency for years, leading to astronomical cost to acquire a customer. In yesterday's SaaS economy, people were okay with that. Today, it's a sure path to failure. This podcast is designed to help you understand how to market with more efficiency, earlier profit, and more tangible results that grow your company and put marketing back in the strategic seat it should have at the table. Again, welcome. Let's jump into today's episode. Since the end of the grow at all costs era and the beginning of the profitable, efficient growth era, it's been either revealed, highlighted, or exacerbated the fact that marketing is not producing the results required to grow the business in a profitable, efficient way. Warren Buffett was fond of saying that when the tide goes out, it's easy to see who is swimming naked. Meaning in good times, everybody was doing well, but when times get bad, then it's easy to see those who were not really doing well, but were just benefactors of favorable circumstances. And what happened here in SaaS is that pretty much everybody was swimming naked, because the bubble that came from economic inefficiencies that led to just the inflated valuations, and therefore which attracted all kinds of money into the industry, it lasted so long. It lasted for years. And so people actually started to think that that's the way it was, because it was years and years and years and years long. And nobody, not even the smartest investors, those running the VC firms that were most successful, none of them actually realized that there was a bubble, that there was economic inefficiency that was keeping money and value tied up in this industry kind of artificially. And so what happened is that the entire playbook that was being run during that time was faulty, and everybody was now, the tide goes out and it's like everybody's swimming naked. And so what do we do now in the era of profitable, efficient growth? What needs to change? And let's talk about the two primary plays that are used right now to do marketing's main job. And if you don't believe this is marketing's main job, then just wait and we'll nuance this a little bit when we talk about the different segments that we're going after, company sizes and things like that. But truly, in the era of profitable, efficient growth, marketing's main job is to create leads that move into the sales pipeline. If it's not doing that, then it's not helping the business grow profitably and efficiently. So the two plays for doing that today, for converting leads into pipeline, are lead nurture and account-based marketing. We're going to talk about a third option, which most people are not considering, but which you absolutely should, and that is direct response funnels. So first of all, let's talk about lead nurture and account-based marketing. You're doing those based on the segment size. So you're probably doing account-based marketing on the larger segments, enterprise, strategic accounts, named accounts. You're doing lead nurture on the smaller segments, SMB, commercial, mid-market, whatever you call those segments there. And of course, resource allocation is different across those two. Lead nurture is supposed to catch the broader net and capture leads and then nurture them so lovingly. I love the word lead nurture, up into a sales call. And the problem with lead nurture is that it's complex. It's become like an increasingly sophisticated motion that requires a lot of software. It's supposed to be personalized. You've got to do lead scoring and you got to manage all this stuff. And at the end of the day, you're not actually doing any of that stuff right. You probably know that. You're not giving it enough attention and not doing it right, and it's not producing results. And when it does, the leads that come out of there are most often judged by sales to be garbage. And a metaphor I have for that is like lead nurture is it's like taking a lead and dropping them into a forest of content and asking them to find their way out. And your lead scoring is like you're watching every move that they make, trying to understand what it means. When are they ready to actually hop on a sales call? And that's really hard for you to interpret all of that. So a lot of times you're going to interpret it wrong. They do this thing. They download this white paper. That must mean that they really want to talk to sales. Well, maybe it doesn't. A lot of times you're wrong about those things, and that lead scoring model becomes, it becomes useless. And even if it is correct, it's really hard for you to communicate the readiness of that lead and that lead state of preparedness to the salesperson who's then going to take that call and begin the sales conversation with them. As somebody who's been on the catching side of that process and having those calls, I know sometimes in Salesforce it's going to say like, hey, they looked at this white paper. Most of the time that was almost completely irrelevant. And what they never told me, and what I have never seen, I don't think there is a great way for marketing to understand in a sophisticated way what is this lead's readiness level after they've been through this lead nurture process and chosen from the 100 pieces of content, and somehow you've deemed them ready to talk to a salesperson. There's just no way for you to properly communicate that condition. Most of the time you don't even understand it yourself. And so that's a problem with lead nurture. Account-based marketing, the problem there is that it's high cost, it's high customization, and because you're just partnering with sales to actually do a sales process, and marketing is part of that sales process, like any salesperson knows, you can go after an account and come up with absolutely zero. You may never even get a conversation, or you may get conversations, but they're with low-level people who aren't stakeholders in the deal, who can't make a decision, who can't really champion your product throughout the organization. And so you can spend money and you can come up empty. I'm not really going to talk about replacing account-based marketing because that is generally tailored for longer sales cycles and larger accounts and larger deals. So that's like your enterprise motion, your strategic motion. And so that's not something that I'm going to talk about replacing here today. But I will talk about a dichotomy that's probably not true, and between how you market to large accounts and how you market to small accounts, and I'll talk about that later. That's actually the last thing we'll talk about here. So instead of this lead nurture, this forest of content that you're asking people, and by the way, it is a burden when you ask somebody to make a decision on what they want to consume on your website. I think 10, 15 years ago, we would think, well, content marketing and nurture marketing is all about giving them the option. Where are they? Like, let them decide. What do they want to do? It is a burden for you to give them a menu of content and be like, what do you want to consume? And if they are looking for a solution to a problem, or they're looking for somebody who understands their problem, they're not on your website to be entertained. They're looking for something. And if you're just going to give them a menu and hope they find their way, you're actually placing undue burden on them. And a lot of the time, the answer that they're going to give to that question is, I don't want to make that choice. I'm out of here. And they'll leave and they won't ever come back. And so, based on that lead nurture model, you're going to assume like, oh, they weren't our customer, or oh, they weren't ready. That may not be true. It just may be that they didn't have the wherewithal or the mental stamina to go and try to find the answer on your website and all the content that you're offering them. So let's talk about a better way. And again, this is not really to replace your account-based marketing at your larger accounts with longer sales cycle, but it is to replace your lead nurture. And that is direct response. You can put a direct response marketing funnel in place of the lead nurture program you're doing today and get much better results. It's the fastest way to get leads who aren't moving forward into sales calls without getting accused of providing bad leads to sales. Now, why is that? Well, in lead nurture, it's like choose your own adventure. Where do you want to go next? And with direct response marketing, the key is speed and efficiency. You can take somebody who's in your lead list and create some very compelling content for them. Maybe you segment them. It's basic segmentation based on their awareness level and potentially their intent if you have some of that data. Create that segmentation and then give them content that is highly, highly compelling to them based on where they're at. What you understand about the problem they're trying to solve, the problem that you solve. And you're going to start actually by teaching them how to solve that problem. You're going to start giving them the keys to solving that problem. The answer isn't hop on a demo. The answer is your solution is not going to solve their problem. And so fundamentally right there, that's the difference. It's not like, let me answer here are 5 ways that you can use my product to do this thing. Like, that's content from a lead nurture program written by a junior employee. And there's no wonder that this stuff doesn't convert, is because you're giving it to the least experienced people in your organization to actually run these things and to write this content. Or even if you had your best content writer, highly paid, he collects a paycheck, he goes home, he doesn't ever even probably know whether his content is producing pipeline or not. So that's a misalignment of incentives. And so you need content that is designed to convert, that is talking to this person about their problem, and your product isn't going to solve their problem. They're going to solve it. You're going to teach them how, and your content's going to teach them how. Your product will help them do it better, faster, cheaper, with greater effectiveness, or with more fun. And if you understand that, you can produce that content in a way that will draw them in and help them feel understood. Jay Abraham said that something along the lines of, if you can describe your customer's problem better than they can, they will automatically assume that you have the answer. And that's what we're trying to do with this content. Okay, not to socialize them about our brand or our product or the features or the results it can provide for them, which we don't even know if they're looking for those results yet. Talking about the problem, if that's the level that they're at. Obviously, we're going to segment these people and we're going to speak to them based on their awareness level and their intent if we have that data. But if they're at the point where what they understand is their problem, then we're going to talk about that in a really compelling way. And it has to be compelling on a personal level. So it has to be, when you're only going to give them 2 options here in this direct response funnel, either move forward or drop out. And that no, I'm not going to move forward, that has to hurt. If we've done this right, they have to feel like, I really don't want to drop out because I want to learn what's next, or I want to get more of this value. And if we've done this right, they're going to feel that way. So you can, if you really wanted to, you could put the no's into lead nurture. Like, do what you're already doing. It's not going to go anywhere because it's not, the results are going to be the same as they are today in the lead nurture portion. But if you wanted to, you could put them there. But don't tell them that, because they need to feel like, hey, you're either move forward in this funnel, go to the next step, or drop out. Now, they can stay there for a little bit. Like, you're going to send them emails. If they don't move forward on the day they hit that step, that's okay. You can email them, you can text them if you're able to get phone numbers and have that level of communication with them. But that all has to be incredibly compelling also on a personal level, because everybody will always do things that are personally compelling to them. So we need to understand who they are, what this problem, the pain that it causes them personally, and what they stand to gain from solving it, what they stand to lose from not solving it. So that is the fastest way to get leads who aren't moving forward into sales calls without getting accused of providing bad leads to sales. Let's talk about the easiest thing you can do to increase your efficiency in your marketing mix. Okay. Lead nurture requires a lot of content. It requires content in multiple different formats if you're going to do it the way that it's, recommended in its all its glory. And direct response marketing requires much less content. Lead nurture would have, you need that forest of content, because you're going to say, like, well, go choose your content. And if there are only 3 things, you seem like a little bit of an ungracious host there, don't you? But in direct response marketing funnels, if we put that in place, we're going to tell them, like, hey, consume this content or go away. And it's one piece. You're going to have one piece of content at a few vital points. So I call them the vital few pieces of content. And they may be in series. So like if you're working with somebody who's lower on the awareness scale and you're trying to move them up that scale, there's going to be a piece of content for where they're at. And then they're going to learn that, and you're going to invite them to move up and consume the next thing. It's going to teach them the next thing that they need to do now that they have a greater awareness of their problem or the solutions that are out there, or how your solution can solve their problem better than the others, wherever they're at on that awareness scale. Also, so there's less content required, less technology required, because in lead nurture, like, it's so complex. You need all these platforms, including attribution platforms, content delivery platforms, all the data platforms. You need to be able to track them maybe across multiple different platforms that you use, or different technologies that you use. And in direct response marketing, there is an email marketing platform. There's a funnel platform where you're putting them into your offers and giving them the things that you're offering to them, and that's it. And those could be the same platform, and you could have other applications that are running on top of that. Like maybe you have like a Mixpanel doing data, or you have Hotjar or Mouseflow doing recordings of people who are on your website. Like, you can add that stuff, but really what you need is those 2 platforms. So it's much more efficient. There's much less work. And then once you have this piece of content that's working and this funnel that's working, you continue to run it. It's not like, unlike lead nurture and choose your own adventure, it's like, well, there are 1,000 different ways that somebody could get through this forest of content. And instead, what we're doing in direct response marketing is we're giving them one path. And that path is much easier to manage. All we have to do is keep the branches off the path instead of trying to optimize for all this incredible stuff. This is also the path for how to stop worrying about attribution and show direct proof of marketing results and contribution. Because with the lead nurture process, you have to try to track this prospect's path through this complicated forest of content and try to take credit for where they've consumed content before. And that's stressful. And I know there's a lot of conflict between sales and marketing, or aspersions cast on marketing, because like, oh, they read this thing 3 months ago, that doesn't matter. And you're like, well, of course it matters, but it's a hard argument to make sometimes. The problem with that is not the attribution, it's the model where you don't have a direct impact, and so you have to do attribution. Again, like in some marketing, like upmarket, if you're doing account-based marketing and that's a problem there, then that's a different story. But here, where you can market for real direct results, attribution is not a problem, because you can just produce direct results and then nobody will question the fact that you produce those results. So in direct response funnels, instead of lead nurturing, when they've taken the step and moved on to the next stage of your funnel. And when you deliver them into a sales pipeline. And you can actually be the one directing the work of an SDR. In this case, it's not an SDR like proactively calling out and then they're like, well, we created our own pipeline. You could actually direct them. And you can put an SDR call into this process if you want to. One of the problems with lead nurture today is that nobody ever gets into the pipeline unless an SDR calls them. And in the direct response world, it's more of like, and you've done this before, but it's more of like, hey, if they've done this thing, then we need to call them within 2 minutes. And you're directing that call instead of it happening, and then you trying to, argue about, well, we get some credit for this too. Also, your return on ad spend can go in the positive if you're doing ad spend or any marketing dollars that you're spending to get people into this lead pipeline. You can actually convert them into positive ROI on your ad spend if you have something that you can sell them from a content perspective. If you have content that you can sell, if you have training that you can sell, if there's something that you can actually monetize in their journey towards this sales call that would prepare them or qualify them for that sales call, you can actually go into the positive. Now, it's not going to cover the salaries and the platform costs and all those things, but the direct ad spend or whatever you spent to get them into that pipeline somehow, you can actually recoup that if you have the right components put together in that direct response funnel. So that's another reason why you can show direct contribution. You can show like, well, we actually made a profit before we ever delivered this lead to you in sales. Let's talk about the path to completely operationalize lead to pipeline conversion for segments you'd rather not focus on. A lot of CMOs and marketing organizations are being encouraged to focus upmarket by their boards or by the other members of the C-suite. Strategically, that's where a lot of people want to go, because especially in this economy, there is money in the enterprise and it's harder to make money in the lower markets. But at least at the level that they want to, but that there is still money in SMB and mid-market, and you don't want to ignore it, but you don't have unlimited resources. So how do you take your resources and focus on enterprise, strategic, or named accounts while still growing this very revenue-rich segment of SMB or mid-market? If that's the situation that you're in, then this is the answer again, because direct response marketing funnels can be put in place to operationalize your lead to pipeline conversion in these smaller segments with these shorter sales cycles and deliver more uniformly qualified leads into the sales pipeline at a faster rate, and a lot of it is automatic. Once you put a funnel together and you optimize it and get it to the right place where it's actually working, it's not something that you change until it stops working. And nothing will work forever, but it could work for months, quarters, years. And so you have this thing that is consistently moving people up into the sales pipeline, and it's automated. And so that's one way that you can continue to capture the revenue from these smaller segments while you focus upmarket on the larger segments. Finally, I'd like to make this argument, and it is that lead capture for prepared leads and lead nurture for unprepared leads is a false dichotomy, and you should do this instead. And what is this? What you guessed it, it's direct response marketing funnels in the in this stage of the pipeline. And the the key thing that I want to make clear here is that you might look at direct response as something that's only lead capture. And hopefully the way that I've described it today, it's not just lead capture. Now, in the designations or the categories that you already have in your mind, it may not fit in cleanly because you may say, well, there's like lead generation, there's demand generation before that, there's lead nurture, there's lead capture, and I'm not going to constrain it to any one of those, but I will say that when you have leads that you've created and they are not ready to jump on a sales call yet because they're on the wrong part of the awareness scale, they haven't demonstrated the intent yet, then you can still do direct response marketing on those people to move them up into the next stage of the awareness scale. So it's not just for those who are finally ready and you use one little like direct response component or tactic to get them the last mile. Direct response marketing is not last mile marketing. It can take a cold lead and move it all the way up into a sales call as a qualified prospect. But you have to understand how to apply these principles of the awareness scale, the copy that's appropriate for each of those awareness scales, the messages, the offers, and how you move people up. And you don't nurture them for 3 years until they change jobs and then like all of a sudden your thing becomes relevant and it had nothing to do with your nurture program. You move them up or you move them out, but you can do it very intentionally and effectively so that you're actually running more people through your whole process and into a sales call. So if you listen to Chris Walker at all, you're hearing that there's actually a lot of data that's showing that, because he started this company and it's all about data and understanding like what's working, what's not. And you're hearing that much of what marketing has been doing for the last 10 years in the era of grow at all costs, it doesn't work now and it didn't really work before, but it was just like adequate before. And the problem is if we continue to try to run these programs now, or we take these programs and we think, well, we just have to optimize them a little bit. Like this old program, it used to work before. Well, no, it didn't. Remember, it was just good times. We were all swimming naked. The tide was high. But if we try to optimize that, we're never going to get there. You need new programs and new approaches that are tailor-made for this economy. And that's what direct response marketing funnels are. So I hope this has been useful. We've talked about how you can get leads who aren't moving forward into sales calls without getting accused of providing bad leads to sales. We've talked about the easiest thing you can do to increase the efficiency in your marketing mix. We've talked about how to stop worrying about attribution and show direct proof of results in marketing contributions. We've talked about the path to completely operationalize lead to pipeline conversion for segments you'd rather not focus on. We've talked about lead capture being for prepared leads and lead nurture for unprepared leads being a false dichotomy and what you can do instead. I hope this has been useful. Thank you for being here today. If you're here at the end, I know that you probably got some value from this somewhere. And if that's true, then please consider sharing this podcast with one of your colleagues, somebody that you respect, and somebody who also needs this kind of content to help them understand what to do in today's world. This podcast is designed to produce exactly those kinds of countercultural opinions, insights, and value. And so if you found value here, I'd appreciate you sharing it. Have a great day. We'll see you next time on the Growth and Influence podcast.